So I work for a magazine based in Australia called Ocean Geographic. It's sort of an unlikely place to have a job considering I'm from the western suburbs of Chicago. I have always had a really amazing love for the ocean, and I think most of it is because I've had the privilege of having Shed Aquarium in the Chicagoland area. It's my favorite place, and I grew up going there, and it really connected me to the sea. Especially being in an inland place where the closest thing I have to water is a big kind of scummy looking lake. You kind of need that inspiration to make you move forward. So I wound up with a job that lets me travel a lot. I'm gone about 6 months of the year and I get to see some really wonderful places. So I'm gonna start us off in kind of 3 different spots, and we're gonna travel around the world together. So the first major expedition that I got to be the project manager for was in 2019, and it was called Elysium Artists for the Arctic. So we spent 3 weeks with 66 people traveling around the Arctic on a 240-foot icebreaker. And I'll tell you, after 3 weeks, 240 feet does not seem very big. You start seeing all the same people everywhere all the time. But it's still an amazing experience, and you get to see scenes like this. There is honestly nothing quite like ice when you see it in the Arctic at the North Pole. It's absolutely spectacular. And the purpose of going was to bring people from all different walks of life. This wasn't just for photographers or just for scientists. We brought photographers, videographers, scientists, naturalists, musicians, dancers, people from everywhere, all over the world, actually from 19 different countries. And the point was that you can bring people from everywhere to see the same thing, but because we have different backgrounds, we always come away with a different perspective. And that has a lot of value when you're trying to tell the story about a place that's changing so rapidly. So the Arctic is actually changing and warming about 2 to 4 times faster than anywhere else on Earth. So it's a place that we really need to be paying attention to in terms of a changing world. Everything in the Arctic is based on sea ice. And we're getting to a point where within the next 10 to 15 years, we're gonna start seeing summers in the Arctic that don't have any sea ice at all. And that's a problem for the animals that live there because they really depend on sea ice for a lot of different reasons. So this is a view from underneath the ice, and all the green stuff is algae. There are over 1,000 species of ice algae that live in the Arctic. And that might seem like a random fact, but it's really important because a lot of different animals require that algae to live, like krill. Krill is sort of the building block of life in the Arctic. It's this little shrimp, and this collection of life actually represents the largest biomass of any marine organism on Earth. It's on the order of millions of tons just in the Arctic. It's pretty incredible. So the one at the bottom is a single krill, and then you see them in these huge schools. And they live along the bottom of the sea ice, and they scrape off the ice algae. That's what they eat. So without sea ice, they don't have food. A lot of things eat krill as well. So this is all kind of stacked on top of how important sea ice is. So this is a bird called a guillemot, and it nests on these huge 300-400 foot steep cliffs in the Arctic. And it goes out every day and hunts for krill. Now this next animal is a bearded seal, and you might wonder how a bearded seal and a bird are connected. Well, they're connected because they have started to have a common predator, which is the polar bear. So polar bears regularly eat these guys. These are on the menu for a polar bear. And they are ice-dependent seals. It means they absolutely need sea ice to breed, to have their babies, and to molt. So they need it. Without sea ice, they don't survive from year to year. This is also a main food source for polar bears. And because there's less ice, there are less seals, which means the polar bears have started to get a little hungry, and they've started looking for other sources of food, one of which are guillemots and their chicks. So polar bears have started scaling these crazy dangerous cliffs looking for basically what amounts to snacks of food. Not enough for them. So you're starting to see thinner bears, less birds, a different population of krill. Everything changes when the sea ice goes away, which is why it's one of those places that we need to pay attention to. And you just can't get views like this anywhere else. This is probably a sunset I will absolutely never forget. This was 2015 Greenland, September 11th morning. Really beautiful, probably never seen anything like it. And that's why I always like to show it, because it's just really a stunner. But the world of sea ice is a really good metaphor for the ocean in general. We only see a tiny portion of it above the water, and the rest of the story is hidden beneath the waves. So we have to kind of go in and dig down and look a little bit deeper to see the whole story, which is sort of what's going on here. So this is an island called Clipperton. Clipperton Atoll is an 8-mile around ring of land in the middle of the Pacific. It is the most remote island in the entire world. It takes 96 hours to get there from Mexico on a good day. It takes a while. It looks like it could be this little island paradise with its one cute little palm tree over there. You can imagine somebody sitting beneath it having a little tropical drink. It also is very beautiful underwater. It doesn't have a lot of diversity, but it is doing extremely well. And it even has endemic fish species, which means that they're fish that are only found there. They're found nowhere else on Earth other than Clipperton. They also have this population of birds on the island. These birds are called the masked booby, and there are about 100,000 of these birds on the island now. It's a beautiful bird, but unfortunately, it's not the only thing that lives on Clipperton. So Clipperton, like I said, is the most remote place, probably in the entire world. And when you go there, this is the close-up view. So it is absolutely covered, and I mean this, every single step I took on the entire 8 miles of this island was covered in plastic. We didn't go here and put plastic here. This is just what happens when a single-use plastic lifestyle has gotten a bit out of control all over the world. You wind up with these places that are at the farthest reaches of our planet where hardly anyone is even able to get to, and they're covered with this indelible human fingerprint of plastic. And it reminds you that no matter where we are on the planet, this is something that we can change. By saying no to single-use plastics, we can keep this kind of thing from happening, from piling up. And I know sometimes it seems far-fetched to think that saying no to a straw, or having a reusable container, or using actual silverware instead of plastic silverware seems trivial. It seems tiny, and you think it's too small. You couldn't possibly, that doesn't make a difference. But when 7.7 billion people on the planet say that doesn't make a difference, it makes a difference. And every little choice that we make influences not just our own lives, but the lives of the people around us. When people see you making changes and doing things for a reason that makes our world a collectively better place, they wonder why you're doing it. They ask. They want to know why you're doing something differently, and it's a great opportunity to kind of lead by example. You don't have to, tell people why you're doing something. Just show them, and you can see that these things make a huge difference in places where there are efforts to curb our plastic use. Because this is just not really something we should see all the time. You shouldn't see a bird facing off with a plastic bottle. You shouldn't see a crab that's making a home out of a piece of plastic. This is just not, we can do better. We need to do better. We shouldn't be going underwater and collecting 3 miles of long lines that have been thrown away off of fishing vessels because people didn't want to recycle them themselves. Or collecting this sort of thing off a beach. We collected 300 bottle caps in 1 square meter of beach, right in the front. This is not acceptable for current generations or for future generations, and we really do need to do better. Luckily, it is a very resilient ecosystem, and it's an incredibly beautiful place, as are many of these places all over the world. And it's nice to see places where there's a lot of hope for the future, and one of them is found in a really unexpected location, which is Cuba. So Cuba, because of its geography and geopolitics, has been isolated from most of the world for quite a few decades now. One of the good things that has come out of that is the fact that their marine protected areas are second to none. In the southern area of Cuba, there's an area called Gardens of the Queen, or Jardines de la Reina, and it is full of sharks. And I know for some of you that might not sound like a good thing, but you should actually be scared if you don't see sharks when you go diving. They're meant to be there. They're apex predators. They're part of the ecosystem. When you don't see them, it means that you're missing a really important chunk of what's meant to be there. So when you go somewhere and you see a dozen plus sharks on a dive, it's awesome. Like, that is a great thing. That's what I want to see, and it makes me really happy. So you can go down to 96 feet, like right here, and see this big sponge with 10 sharks swimming around it and fish everywhere. It's this beautiful, healthy ecosystem, and it's because the area has been protected for decades, and very few people go diving here. Only about 1,500 people every year go diving in Gardens of the Queen, and it shows. It's absolutely beautiful. And to kind of illustrate to people that sharks don't have to be these big scary things, that we can exist peacefully in their world, one of my friends, Jessie, came with us. She's a world record holding free diver. She can hold her breath for 8 minutes and 12 seconds underwater. I don't think she's human. And still look relaxed. I don't know how it happens. But you get to take images like this, where you've got someone underwater holding their breath for many minutes at a time in this beautiful hand-painted silk dress with sharks swimming all around her. They don't care. She doesn't care. It's not a big deal. She's just a calm part of their ecosystem, and it shows you how easily we can coexist with nature when we want to. And you get to see really beautiful sights like these guys. This is one of my favorite animals. This is a silky shark. And photographing them at sunset is one of the highlights of my diving career. They're absolutely beautiful. They're really interested. They're very nosy sharks, so they're always poking at you. But as far as sharks go, it's not too problematic. They're not nippy. And you also get to see this animal. So this is a Goliath grouper. They used to be extremely plentiful in Florida, and luckily because of fishing regulations, they're coming back. But these guys are giant, as you can imagine from the name. They can actually be about the size of a Volkswagen Beetle when they're full grown. This is a gigantic fish. And they were almost entirely fished out of Florida and the Gulf until we took steps to protect them. In Cuba, though, that never really happened because fishing for these guys wasn't a thing. So people come from all over the world to go diving with them because it's one of the only places you can see them anymore, which is a really cool thing to see. They also have these wonderfully healthy reefs. They have what you call mooring buoys, so instead of actually anchoring on the reef, they anchor to a buoy, so you're never actually damaging any of the bottom of the reef. So you get these big healthy ecosystems with loads of fish, sharks. It's what it's supposed to look like. And they actually have one of the only remaining fields of elkhorn coral. It's a beautiful hard coral that we used to find all over the Caribbean and is now been reduced to about 5% of its original distribution. It doesn't do well in warm waters, and as our waters get a little bit warmer, it doesn't do very well and doesn't rebound quickly. In Cuba, because they've done so much to protect their region, we still have this, which is great. It means we have a place that gives us hope for the future, which is exciting. And you also get to see these guys. So there are crocodiles in Cuba, and it is so fun to take pictures of them. Luckily, I do have a pretty sizable camera underwater, so it's not really a worry. But yeah, you have to spend a lot of time just kind of floating at the surface. I spent several days setting up this shot because I really wanted a different perspective than I'd seen in other photos, which are usually from the top down. And I thought this was the way to do it. Thought I had to hop in and get a crocodile eye view. It's a bit different. So in line with that, as we're talking about giving back, I wanted to give back more to ocean conservation efforts because the ocean has given me my job and provides me with my livelihood and the things that I enjoy most in my life. So I started an ocean conservation company in 2017 called Blue Ring. Blue Ring began as a really simple concept. It was a $25 annual membership, and you get to marry the ocean or get adopted by the sea, either way. So you get a ring or a pendant that's made from repurposed silicone. And every year, I donate 75% of my proceeds to a different ocean conservation nonprofit. And when that wasn't quite enough anymore, I started a product line. So I now have stainless steel water bottles, metal straws, reusable produce bags that are made out of ghost fishing nets, and bamboo utensils. And I've got plans to do toothbrushes and coffee cups and all kinds of stuff. So it's this small stuff that we can do in life, just these little changes that we make that collectively make a huge difference, even when we live far away from the ocean. So I guess I'd like to close this out by mentioning that it's easy to forget when we live in the Midwest. Like, I'm from Chicago, we're in Indiana, we're not directly connected to the ocean in a way that we see. But no matter where on earth we live, every drop of water we drink, every breath we take connects us to the sea. And we're at the center of everything that's going on in the ocean, and it's sort of our job to take care of it. And I try to use my images to tell those stories because we need to be the voice for the ocean. And we need to appreciate the fact that we've got this wonderful place on a beautiful blue marble that we are lucky enough to call home. So thank you for having me.